John Bythesea was born on the 15th of June, 1827, in Somerset, England, to Reverend George Bythesea. He was the youngest of 5 sons in a family noted for its military service, a fact borne out as, one by one, each of his older brothers joined the army. Bythesea flouted this tradition at the age of 14 when he joined the Royal Navy. He gained promotion to the rank of lieutenant on the 12th of June 1849, and almost a year to the day later was posted to the HMS Arrogant. The Arrogant was a wooden screw frigate, meaning that it was powered by steam engines and driven forward by screw propellers. Such ships retained the classic arrangement of cannon facing out from their port and starboard sides, allowing the delivery of a broadside, as seen in battles such as Trafalgar with sailing ships. Where screw ships gained their advantage over the vessels of Nelson's era was in their ability to navigate successfully regardless of wind conditions. However, screw frigates did retain masts, sails, and rigging in case the necessary coal supplies were unavailable, or if any available coal was deemed too expensive to purchase, or if the still elementary steam engines malfunctioned. As time passed, the wooden screw frigates like the Arrogant were replaced with iron ships, which in turn allowed heavier guns to be used, marking an important development in naval warfare. The Arrogant was launched in 1848 in Portsmouth, and served successfully in the Royal Navy until she was sold in 1867. Her first captain was Robert Fitzroy, the same naval officer that had commanded the HMS Beagle, conveying Charles Darwin on his second research trip, the findings of which would be recorded in The Origin of Species. Fitzroy was also a keen student of meteorology, and invented the word forecast to describe his weather predictions. Sadly, he suffered from depression, perhaps a family curse, and cut his throat in 1865, having attained the rank of Vice Admiral. The Arrogant displaced 2,690 tons, had a crew of 450, and was armed with 46 guns, including 2 68-pounders. She was sent to the Baltic at the outbreak of the Crimean War in 1854, under Captain Hastings Yelverton. On the 15th of April 1854, she helped capture the Russian brig Patriotin. Throughout much of 1855, the Arrogant, under Yelverton, along with the HMS Magicienne, operated independently in the Baltic, carrying out successful naval shore bombardment operations and destroying 2 fortresses before sailing home. Along with John Bythesea and William Johnstone, a third crewman, George Ingouville, also won a Victoria Cross. I will tell his story at a later date. It was a visit made by Captain Yelverton to Admiral Napier on the 7th of August 1854 that set into motion the sequence of events that would lead to Bythesea and Johnstone winning the Victoria Cross. During the conversation between Yelverton and Napier, it was revealed that Allied intelligence had found out that dispatches from the Russian Tsar to the garrison at Bomarsund were to arrive at Vado Island before continuing their journey to the fortress. The Bomarsund fortress was located in Sund, one of the Åland Islands that lay between Sweden and Finland. It was the strongest fortification in the vicinity. As the Russian Navy refused to engage in any decisive action in order to protect its assets to defend against the marine landing directed against St. Petersburg, the capital at the time, and lying vulnerable at the eastern shore of the Gulf of Finland, Bomarsund became a target for the otherwise unoccupied Anglo-French forces in the area. The First Battle of Bomarsund was nothing more than a small-scale naval bombardment, conducted by 3 ships of the Royal Navy. It was during this action that the first Victoria Cross ever was won by Charles Davis Lucas, whose exploits I have detailed elsewhere. There is a link below. Throughout July 1854, ships of the Royal Navy began to rendezvous in the surrounding sea of Bomarsund, out of the range of battery fire. At the close of the month, 25 ships were patrolling back and forth close to the fortress, waiting for the arrival of French infantry, who would land and attack from the weaker land side. The conversation between Yelverton and Napier on the 7th of August was a prelude to the assault. The first landings took place on the 8th of August, and saw the establishment of British and French land-based artillery, which began a bombardment. An outer tower was quickly captured by the French. The main bombardment of the actual fortress commenced on the 15th of August. Rather than a prelude to a ground assault, 24 hours later the guns were still firing, until a gaping hole was torn in the wall, while many of the defensive cannon had been silenced. There was very little to be done now against a determined assault, and so, late on the 16th of August, Bomarsund was surrendered, and some 2,000 soldiers entered captivity. The much less imposing Vado lies on the eastern side of the Åland Islands, and for over 200 years it had played a central role in the mail service, operating between Stockholm in Sweden and Turku in Finland. It was the obvious point at which dispatches would arrive, and therefore the obvious point at which those dispatches should be intercepted. Napier inquired if Yelverton might know anyone with the enterprise for such a mission, to which Bythesea later replied in the affirmative. Realizing that this mission called for guile, Bythesea asked around the crew of the Arrogant to see if anyone could speak Spanish. Surprisingly, he found that one of the leading stokers, one of those responsible for the hard labor of shoveling coal into the furnace to power the steam engine of the ship, could. Enter William Johnstone. William Johnstone to this day remains a mysterious figure. We know he was 31 years old at the time of the Vado mission. His origins, along with his unusual ability to speak Swedish, are not so clear. Although his name was reported as William Johnstone, there is no record from the crew list of such a man. There was, however, a leading stoker named John Johnstone, serving aboard the Arrogant. Born in Hanover, it is suspected that his surname was perhaps Johansson, which was changed to Johnstone. If correct, the original Swedish surname would indicate a family of Swedish origin, and therefore neatly explain where his linguistic ability came from. Again, this is all speculation. To be clear, the name of the man presented the Victoria Cross was recorded as William Johnstone, but there was no William Johnstone aboard the Arrogant at the time of the mission. Who he was remains, in the final analysis, a mystery. Whoever William Johnstone was, he continued to serve in the Royal Navy until he mutilated his own throat in 1857, after attacking another sailor with a knife while sailing in the West Indies. He was buried at sea, and although his body is forgotten, his deeds are not, and his medal remains on display in the Natural History Museum in Los Angeles County. Sadly, no image remains of this brave man, hence my being forced to use only a photograph of Bythesea in presenting the deeds of these two men together. Bythesea's plan was for the two men to row ashore, gather intelligence, and wait to make their interception. Captain Yelverton was initially skeptical that just the two of them could pull it off, but was persuaded that a larger party would attract unwelcome attention. So, on August the 9th, Bythesea and Johnstone quietly landed on Vado, without arousing any local suspicion. Fortune continued to favour them as they came across a farmer who was hostile to the Russians after losing horses to them. He took them in, providing the sailors with a base from which they began to explore the local area, and in particular the road over which the couriers would travel to Toto en route to Bomarsund. At one point, Bythesea and Johnstone were forced to dress as peasants, so as not to run afoul of a Russian patrol. Word came to the pair on August the 12th that the dispatches were en route, and so they took position to ambush the couriers. The accompanying armed guard turned back after scouting the road, confident no doubt that the messages could now be conveyed safely over this stage of the journey. Taking advantage of the lapse in security, Bythesea and Johnstone sprung their trap, startling the unarmed couriers with drawn pistols. 2 couriers dropped their bags and ran off into the night, while the other 3 gave up the fight and surrendered, perhaps believing they were surrounded by a larger force. With the post bags nabbed, Bythesea and Johnstone forced their 3 prisoners to row back to the Arrogant, which they all boarded safely. For their bravery, the 2 men were nominated for the Victoria Cross. Bythesea was presented his medal by Queen Victoria at a special ceremony held in Hyde Park, London, on the 26th of June 1857. Johnstone was sailing in the West Indies at this time, shortly before his suicide, and did not attend the ceremony. Bythesea continued a successful career in the Navy. He was appointed lieutenant in charge of the HMS Locust, continuing to serve in the Baltic. Later, he saw action in the Second Anglo-Chinese War, as captain of the HMS Cruiser. His promotion to captain was recognized on the 15th of May, 1861. Various commands followed until disaster struck in 1872. As captain of the HMS Lord Clyde, he joined the Mediterranean fleet. Lying at Syracuse, the Lord Clyde was ordered to sail to help a paddle steamer that had run aground. Unfortunately, the Lord Clyde in turn found itself unable to move. It had itself become grounded. Despite jettisoning anything and everything that would go over the side, the warship refused to float free. The swell, however, caused underwater collisions to take place, and Bythesea's ship became damaged, the rudder in particular. Another ship, the HMS Lord Warden, sailed to help and eventually towed the Lord Clyde free. But without a rudder, the ship was uncontrollable, further slowing the whole operation. Finally docking in Malta, the report was that repairs would take 6 months to effect. Bythesea, along with the navigating officer, was court-martialed in April 1872 and removed from command. He never commanded at sea again after committing this cardinal sin. 2 years later, Bythesea married Fanny Belinda Pryor, though the couple were childless. He retired in 1877 and was promoted to Rear Admiral on the retired list. He died on the 18th of May 1906 in South Kensington. His Victoria Cross is on display in the Imperial War Museum, London.